Alright, come, let's go. Okay, so we're looking at practice paper 1, booklet B. Now, the diagram below shows the flow of blood in a human circulatory system. So straight off the top, you know that we are interested, the topic is on circulatory system. Okay, from the diagram, identify two blood vessels A, B, C or D that are rich in oxygen. Now, when you are rich in oxygen, okay, remember, there's only two blood vessels. And sometimes if you forget in exam, you reason with yourself. The two blood vessels that are rich in oxygen will be the blood vessels that is coming out of your lungs over here, which is C. Why? Because right over at your lungs here, what is happening is that your lungs is carrying out gaseous exchange. Now, in gaseous exchange, right, you want to remove your carbon dioxide, CO2. Cannot write CO2 in exam. I short form no space already. And you want to take in oxygen, O2. Okay, so once this gaseous exchange has happened, all the blood would have actually been oxygenated. So the blood that is leaving, okay, from these lungs to your heart will be rich in oxygen. Now, then from your heart, when it leaves to go to the rest of the body, it also needs to be rich in oxygen, because it just is actually just arrived or left from your lungs. And think about it, if it's not rich in oxygen, then why are you sending the blood to the rest of your body? If it's low in oxygen, correct or not? Then it defeats the purpose, because in respiration, you need oxygen. So therefore, your answer is C and A. Okay, now, next. Blood that is rich in carbon dioxide. So which are the two blood vessels? Now what happened is, the two vessels that is rich in your carbon dioxide will be D as well as B. Why? You think about it, at the upper part of your body or whichever other part, okay, they can change this. It doesn't always have to be upper part. It can be lower part, it can be from your liver, it can be from your stomach. But the whole idea, it can be from your arms, your brains, whatever. But the whole idea about it is, at other parts of your body, the key thing is that respiration has occurred. In the cells. So when it has occurred in the cells, always remember, the byproduct of it is actually what? Is actually carbon dioxide, CO2. So can you, yes, so can you imagine when all your cells, other parts of your body carries out respiration, okay, CO2 get produced, it needs to go into the blood. And that's where it will, all the CO2 will return to the blood. Okay, I'm going to use blue to show the oxygenated blood. And then it will carry this carbon dioxide to your heart. From your heart, it will go to the lungs, whereby it's being removed. You see how it's linked? So because your heart pumps deoxygenated blood, which is rich in carbon dioxide, to your lungs to be removed, that's why B is also rich in carbon dioxide. So answer is B and D. Alright, so in exam, you need to be able to justify like that. Alright, so always ask yourself, blood that is coming out from all parts of the body, I don't care, is it upper part, lower part, other organs, from the head, from the arm, is rich in carbon dioxide, because the cells over there will have carried out respiration and all the oxygen will have been used up. Instead, carbon dioxide is produced. This carbon dioxide needs to then go into these blood vessels, okay, to be carried back to the heart, and then from the heart to the lungs to be removed. Okay, now moving on. The graph below shows the amount of carbon dioxide in the samples taken from 4 blood vessels, A, B, C, and D listed above. Okay, percentage of carbon dioxide in sample. Which blood vessels A, B, or C does X represent? So if you take a look at it, it is the lowest. Okay, it is the lowest, okay, comparing to all blood found in these 4 blood vessels. So which one has the lowest? Obviously, it has to be C. Why? Because C just came from your lungs. And in your lungs, you will have removed your carbon dioxide. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Mr. Chong, you said remove. How come it's not 0? How come it's not 0 but it's showing the minimal? Because you need to understand that not all the carbon dioxide gets removed at one go. Your lungs can only, that gaseous exchange happens within a limited time. And during that time frame, only a certain amount of carbon dioxide can be removed, leaving behind some residue. And this is the residue I'm talking about. Okay? So X is actually C. So for this kind of question now, you need to be very careful. Okay? Is it carbon dioxide, is it oxygen they're talking about? And for blood vessels, they're always opposite one. What does it mean? If the blood vessel carrying blood is rich in oxygen, it must be poor in carbon dioxide. Likewise, if the blood vessel that's carrying blood that is rich in carbon dioxide, it must be poor in oxygen. Okay? They are opposite. Okay, any questions before I move on? All clear? Good. Sit up straight, please. Moving on. Now, besides transporting gases, name 2 other substances that are transported by blood in the human circulatory system. Now, I want to talk about this. This one, right, has very serious implication. Listen up. Eyes on screen. It's a very common mistake that y'all ignore the fact that besides, I don't know why y'all like to ignore that one. 2, you have a very serious misconception, or you give very general comment, like what? Food. So you're telling me that the whole entire hamburger can be traveling through your blood vessel. Literally, that's what you're telling me. Cannot. Okay, so I'm looking for digested food. Thank you, Emmanuel. Yes. I'm looking for digested food. Okay, you cannot say the gases. Okay. Now, what else can you put inside? Okay, you have waste products, very good. You can put glucose. I accepted glucose because it's a very high level answer, well done. Okay, you can say many things. You can say water. You can even say mineral salts. Okay. Now, minerals, okay, digested food and glucose is the same. So all these are either or. So if you put digested food and you put glucose as your substance as the second one, no, cannot. Okay? Cannot. So what I'm looking for is digested food, except glucose, except water, except mineral salts, also accept. Okay? So be very clear. Next. Alright, the diagram below shows the male and female reproductive system of humans. Okay? Now we're going to do a bit of quick labeling so that you know. Now over here, quick revision, this is known as your fallopian tube. Okay, or oviduct. I know, right? But I don't know why your syllabus says that it's fallopian tube. But in secondary school, you're allowed to use oviduct. So your C is actually your ovary or ovaries because it's pointing to 2. Okay, your E over here is actually your vagina. Your D over here is actually your womb, where the baby develops. Okay, so just a quick revision. The fallopian tube is where fertilization takes place, not your womb. I stress again. It is the fallopian tube where fertilization takes place. Common misconception, people always say it's the womb. That's wrong. Okay, moving on. Now, so your B over here, obviously the most common structure is your testis, for plural, testicles. And then over here, it's your penis lah, but actually it's pointing to your urethra. But never mind, urethra is this thing that you pee out of. Okay, but I don't think you need to know that. In secondary school, you will know. Okay, so a lot of you got this question wrong because they say, okay, store reproductive cells. Hello, excuse me, can you all please read the question carefully? You know, some of you tell me what? Oh, male, the penis actually stores reproductive cell. What? Don't laugh. A lot of you wrote multiple answers, wrote everything, A, B, then the next one, C, D, E. Huh? Then I'm like, what? You're not answering the question, and it's not just one person, no. It's about, I think, nearly 1/3 of the class did that. So look very carefully. And not only that, do you realize that this is singular? So if it's singular, then why are you all writing more than one part? So read the question carefully. There's a reason why, okay, the question is phrased in this way. So for the male part, I hope you know that it's actually B. Your testis is the one that produces and stores your sperms. Your sperms is actually your reproductive cell. And your female is the eggs. And the one that actually matures and as well as stores your eggs will be your C, your ovaries. Okay? Now, the diagram below shows process X taking place. Alright, so obviously you have your sperm meeting your egg. I told you all this many times already. Okay? This part over here is actually the fusion part. So this is fertilization. A lot of you cannot spell fertilization. You can put S also, whatever. I accept both. Okay, I have to spell for y'all. Okay, C, I like to spend a little bit more time on this. Now, take the characteristics that a baby could inherit. Inherit, that means, okay, it comes from genetically, okay? Now, how do you know that it's a genetic trait? Now, a genetic trait is not affected by environment. What is my environment? Okay? Write this down. So, for example, okay, let's just say height. Now, height is not a good example. Let's just say eye color. So, let's say you grew up in a very poor environment, Sheldon. Your eye color is purple. Yeah, you got it from your parents. It doesn't matter whether are you in a poor environment or when you're in a rich environment, your eye color won't change. That is the meaning of when I say it is not affected by environmental factors. So which one is not? Type of ear loops as well as color of eyes. These two will not be affected. Your length of hair and length of fingernails is affected. So when you can cut your hair, right? Your length of fingernails also can be cut. So it's not something that is so-called inherited, but it's actually influenced by your environment. So for example, if your environment is very hot, okay, very hot, I want to cut my hair short. Okay, let's just say you work a lot with your hands. You are a construction worker or you are an engineer. You cannot afford to have long nails because it will break. Okay? Next. Alright, the diagrams below shows a close-up view of the gills of a fish and the tiny openings found on the leaf. State the similarity in the function. Okay, now I want to stress this. The function of it is for gaseous exchange. So, I mean there is more other functions. So for example, the stomata has got other functions. For example, okay, so Daniel asks, is that all? Obviously not. So for example, another function of the stomata is to allow your water vapor to escape. Because it brings up water from the roots of the plant, which I've explained earlier. Okay, so I will talk about that in a little while. Give me a second. So the primary function of both is that both, okay, the gills and tiny openings, please follow exactly allow gaseous exchange to happen. Now, just now, Joshua asked a very good question. Okay, so I'm going to revise with you. Now, so imagine you have a plant. Okay, then the roots are here. And then you have your leaves. And then you have your water. Now, I don't know if you remember, okay, I told you already, under the topic of transport in water, your water particles, they are sort of attracted to each other. Okay, they are like a chain. Imagine all your friends holding on your hands. And then as your friend exits, what will happen? Your first friend, as he exits, he will pull the second friend, and your second friend will pull on to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It's like a chain. Yes, reaction. So what happens is that as your water leaves the leaf, it will pull this chain of water from the roots upwards, helping in the absorption. For two reasons why this must happen. One is to bring water from the roots all the way up to the leaf for what? Photosynthesis, very good. So without the loss of water vapor, water cannot be drawn up to the leaves for photosynthesis. That's one. Two, it is to cool the plant down on a hot day. So you imagine, wow, the sun is so strong, it's so relentless. Your plant is heating up. So how? Because of this action of the water being brought up, it cools the plant down. So two functions. Alright? Next, the gills of the fish have many folds. Explain the purpose of having many folds. Now, yes, now, what is the problem with most of your answers? Firstly, you must understand, the folds is an adaptation. Okay, to make for a job to more efficient. So you ask yourself, what is the job here? The job of your gills is for gaseous exchange to happen, correct? So you want it to happen at a faster rate or a more. The word more or faster needs to be there, and I don't see it in your answer. And that is the problem. You all say, those who say increase surface area, right? It's either you all say, oh, to increase surface area, full stop. You get only half a mark. You need to elaborate. So how does having a greater surface area help with the job of the gills, which is to allow the intake of oxygen to happen at a faster rate or allow gaseous exchange to happen at a faster rate? So I would say something like this. Okay? I would say the folds increase the exposed surface area of the gills, allowing gaseous exchange to happen at a faster rate. So instead of saying gaseous exchange, you can also say intake of oxygen. You can also say removal of carbon dioxide at a faster rate. So half mark for telling me increases exposed surface area. Half mark for telling me allow at a faster rate. That's what I want to see. Without the faster, nope, you're not getting the mark. Okay? Because this is an adaptation to do the job better. It's a little bit like your, why does your heart pump faster during exercise? It is to transport more digested food and oxygen. Okay? Because even without exercising, your heart is already pumping oxygen and digested food around your body. It's just that when you exercise, it needs to pump harder to bring about more. Okay? That's the general idea. Got it? Okay, moving on. Okay, I'm going to skip this question 32 as well as this question. I'm going to skip it, alright, due to time constraint. We will come back to this question after your exams or before your exam if we have time. I highly doubt it. Next. Let's move on straight to a very common question. Guys, if you take a look, be it your topical practice paper or be it how I always repeatedly tell you this will come up for exam, this will come up for exam. You look at your past year paper. This question will not come up how many times already. Okay, it came up for your weighted assessment. It came out for your topical practice. It came out in the past year paper. I think you all know what was coming out already. Okay? Take note, this is a common question. Okay? You all need to know how to answer this kind of question. Now, Jack conducted an experiment on a plant with two white flowers, A and B. One part of the stem was cut off at point X as shown below. So point X is here. Okay? Now the plant was then placed in a beaker of blue colored water. After 2 days, Jack observed that flower A had turned light blue. This is like coloring session for me. Okay, while B remained unchanged. Okay, give a reason for the observation in flower A and B. Now, most of you got this question right. I'm so thankful because it means that you all are listening to me and you are doing the right thing. Okay, so I just want to run through some important points. So first things first, a quick revision. Now, when you cut the plant this way and you look from it, the stem at the top, you will know that this is what you see. Now there are two so-called two rings. Now the first ring the inner ring, okay, this over here is known as your xylem or your water carrying tubes. You see, I use one word xylem, right? I save three letters. Three words. Okay, think about it, but I'll make sure you spell it correctly. Then the one that I'm coloring in red, the outer, very good, Flower, well done, Emmanuel. Or food carrying. Okay. Now, so what happened is at point X, you have to understand that what happened was that they cut it so deep until both was removed. Okay, so they cut it so deep until I don't know how much they cut lah, but basically this was all gone when they cut. So because this was cut, okay, the water carrying tubes was several. Okay, cannot. There is no water that can actually pass from here all the way up to this part. Why? Because at this juncture here, already gone already. No more. So this is not possible. Okay? So now we understand the story. Let's see how we can phrase the answer. Now, the first thing you need to tell me is that watering tubes were removed. Okay, so you need to say that the watering tubes. I know that some of you said both watering tubes and food carrying tubes were removed. Okay, good for you. Yes, actually you cannot remove the water carrying tubes without removing the food carrying tubes because the food carrying tubes is on the outside. Okay. Were removed or were cut.
Are you allowed to write xylem?
Yes. At point X. Okay. So 1 mark for telling me that. Where's the other half and half mark? You have to justify for me why A can receive water. So you have to say that flower A can still receive water from the roots. Okay, as it is below point X. Because only at point X, then you cut the water carrying tube. So anything below it, the water carrying tube is still intact. Or you should tell me that flower A can still receive water because the water carrying tubes are still intact. Somewhere along those lines. Okay? However, flower B is not able to reach or cannot receive any water from the roots as it is located above point X. So because it's above point X, you told me that at point X is already cut already, water carrying tubes removed. So because it's above now, so if it's above, then obviously no more water carrying tubes, is not able to receive it. But you must just justify why. So by telling me the location is above point X, you justify already. Right? So that's how clear you need to be. Okay, moving on. Now, this question over here. Okay. Okay, this question. Now, some of you I have not completed marking for this question. Now, it's okay. So what's going to happen is it's pretty straightforward. So they tell you that the plant transport system consists of the water carrying tubes and food carrying tubes. The bird shown below uses its beak to peck holes into a bark of a young tree to get the sugary sap, which contains food. Now, a lot of you tell me that it needs to peck and do B, because you think that because it's a sap, you think that this is liquid. And because it's liquid, it should be water carrying tubes.
The water carrying tube is inside, because you more pressure.
Okay, so this is a wrong concept. Why? Why? This is wrong. Because they told you it's actually food. So if it's food, it should be your outer one over here, which is actually your phloem or your food carrying tubes. This is actually your xylem, water carrying tube. So the bird has to peck to A only. Explain your answer. Now, you need to tell me that it's only until A because A is the food carrying tubes. Okay? where the sap can be found. What sap is inside the question statement? Look. Oh. Okay. Oh, you're done. Y'all did this question right, but you can ask me what is sap. So this tells me that A is either you didn't read your question properly, or B, you don't understand. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for today and we will continue the next lesson. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Question number 34. Now, one look at this, in fact, even without reading the question, you would probably understand that this is a question of photosynthesis. So like I say, this is a very common example because they like to use this plant known as a hydrilla. Now the hydrilla plant, because it's an underwater plant, you are able to see bubbles coming out from it. Now this bubbles is actually oxygen. Now with every photosynthesis question, I always tell my students this. You should write down the word equation for photosynthesis in order to help you. So as we all know, photosynthesis requires a few things to happen, and the first thing will be water together with carbon dioxide would give you oxygen as well as glucose. Now what you also need would be your light energy and your chlorophyll. So looking at this, you know that oxygen is being produced over here, and these are the bubbles, or this is the gas X that they're going to ask you on, alright, in the next question. So also the fact that they told you that the experiment is set near a window hints you that this provides the light energy that is required for photosynthesis to happen. So after 8 hours, it's discovered that gas X being produced. Identify gas X from our word equation. I already told you that the answer is oxygen. How gas X is formed? Now, for this question, many of you left out certain points. Either you left out the light or you left out one of the components. So please, wherever you do this kind of question, write down your word equation first and then see what's happening. So from your word equation, you know that, alright, carbon dioxide, light, water, as well as chlorophyll, they're all needed. Okay, make sure you talk about these things as well as identifying the process of photosynthesis. So I would say that gas X is formed through the process of photosynthesis, where light, carbon dioxide, and water is taken in and oxygen bracket gas X and glucose is formed. Now, please note that there are certain parts of this answer that is not needed, but I thought that it would be really good for you to put in a complete answer. So which are the parts that are not needed would be things like glucose, because they didn't really ask you what are all the end products. But I thought it's good to give a complete answer by telling them both oxygen and glucose is formed. So one way that you could actually, I know some of you are worried, you put gas X instead of oxygen because you're afraid that you identified gas X wrongly. So in this case, what you can do is you can do something like me. About what I did, I put a bracket that gas X. So the examiner cannot fault me in the event whereby I have identified gas X wrongly. Alright, let's say I say gas X is carbon dioxide, but in my second part of the question, I actually know what is happening and I put a bracket gas X there. Alright? Next, what should she do to increase the amount of gas X collected? Now, for this question, you need to be very careful. Okay, what do I mean by that? You need to be very careful. In the first place, they are asking for do. I repeat and stress again. This is a common error for many students. We all know that water, carbon dioxide, and light is needed for photosynthesis to happen based on our word equation. So some of you would say, oh, she could increase the concentration of carbon dioxide. My question to you is how? How do you do it? Because she said, what can she do, right? All right, the word here is do. So you have to tell me a method and not just tell me what needs, what to increase. You tell me how to increase it, okay? So there are a few ways to go about doing it. You have carbon dioxide, you have light. These are the two things that you can increase in. Now, some of you have also talked about chlorophyll, but obviously you cannot just inject chlorophyll into your plant cells, right? So what many of you did was to say that, oh, you could put more hydrilla plants. We accepted that, okay? But be careful. Sometimes they will say without changing certain components. But in this case, they didn't say that. It's fine to say more hydrilla plants. That's fine. Other ways would include your increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in it. All right, so you can say, oh, you know, put a chemical substances that will actually give up more carbon dioxide. Okay, or another way to do that would be to put in a living thing, such as a fish, because your fish would be able to respire, and when your fish respires, it gives out carbon dioxide. Or even more simply, you can talk about increasing light intensity by putting an additional lamp. All right. So I'm going to write down two answers. So the first one is you could actually put a fish into the beaker. All right. So the second part, the bracket part, is not needed. It's just for the explanation. Okay. So respiration will give out carbon dioxide. So when you increase the amount of carbon dioxide, you will also be able to increase the amount of photosynthesis, thereby yielding more oxygen. The second way is to increase light intensity by putting an extra lamp, okay, or light, or give it light source. All right, and that's how you can. But the key thing is always you must tell me how do you do it. All right. Next, a farmer planted two similar tomato plants in a dark room. He used two light bulbs of different light intensities. The plants were watered daily for a month. Which setup would enable the farmer to get larger tomato after 1 month? Okay, so most of you were able to correctly identify that it would be your setup 2. Why? Because there was higher light intensity. So higher light intensity means that more photosynthesis can occur. Now, here's the thing. The key thing is that you're talking about tomato here. Now, your tomato is actually a fruit. So you need to recognize that for fruits, right, they store sugar and they store starch. Okay? They store sugar and they store starch. So you need to explain somewhere in your answer that because of the higher light intensity, your plant can produce more glucose, which will be converted excess glucose would then be converted to starch and stored in your fruit. So that is something that you need to know. Well, sometimes they may not be stored as starch, they can be just stored as sugar. Okay, but the whole idea here is to understand that there's excess. Alright, so how would your answer look like? Okay, so first thing, you're going to say setup 2. Once again, sometimes they don't have marks for just identifying a setup. Your explanation needs to be there. So you have to tell me that, sorry, I didn't put the word up here. Okay, setup 2. So why? So you need to first say that, okay, in setup 2, there is a higher light intensity which increases rate of photosynthesis. So this is where the first marking point go. Okay, brighter, higher light intensity, identification of that first marking point. Second marking point, increases rate of photosynthesis. This leads to a higher production of glucose. Third point, and the last point would be excess glucose would be stored as starch in the fruit. Okay, so I'm going to go through again. First marking point, identification of higher light intensity. Second one, higher light intensity increases rate of photosynthesis. This then leads to a higher production of glucose, which leads to an excess. Any excess would then be stored as starch in your fruit. So, half mark each. Okay. State one variable that must be kept for this experiment to be a fair test. So everything should be the same. The only one that you shouldn't be the same is what you're trying to find out. How does that variable affect the experiment? So obviously in this case, it will be light intensity. So besides light intensity, everything else we will accept. So examples would be amount of water, okay, given on a daily. Okay, you can have location of the setup, you can have the type of bulb. Now note the difference. Type of bulb is different from units. So you have to, because nowadays there is LED bulbs, there is fluorescent bulb. So I wouldn't use type of light or type of bulb. That is actually can be quite confusing, because type of bulb can be taken as, oh, the light intensity of each bulb must be exactly the same. Right? That is also a way that you classify type of bulb. So to make it more clear cut, please list things down like location, amount of water given, type of plant, you know what I mean? So yeah, try to avoid factors that are ambiguous. Moving on to question 36. This is very important. Alright, electrical systems. I hope you have gone through it. Jane bought a torchlight from a department store and found that there is a paper strip between the contacts of switch as shown in the diagram. The paper strip has to be pulled out before the torchlight can be used. Suggest a benefit of putting the paper strip between the contacts of the switch for the torchlight in the store. Explain why the switch is used. So first things first, we need to understand a few things. Now, the paper strip, it is actually made of paper, and paper in this case is actually a insulator of electricity. Now on this note, I would like to stress that the word insulator of electricity needs to be spelled out in full, meaning including electricity. A lot of students like to say, oh, paper is an insulator. No, insulator of what? Insulator of electricity, insulator of so many other things. So just by saying insulator alone will not give you the mark later on. You have to tell me insulator of electricity. So as you can see, the paper strip is actually placed over here. Okay, and then the two contact points, if I zoom in, is actually your switch as well as your battery. Okay, contacts the wire leading to your battery. So in short, if you ask me, this acts like a circuit, something to break up the circuit so that it becomes incomplete and electric current cannot flow. So what is the benefit of it? Well, think about it. If you're going to put this in the store to sell, you don't want people to be able to turn on your torchlight, right? You also do not want people to waste the the energy that is stored in your batteries by turning it on. So to prevent all these things from happening, the strip, which is an insulator of electricity, breaks the circuit, alright, and makes it incomplete. So I would say that the benefit is to conserve the battery, alright, and prevent wastage of electrical energy. Now, reason why. So you have to explain why is it that this would work. So remember, we're talking about COE, circuit. C stands for circuit. Is a circuit open or closed? We talk about electric current, CEO. E stands for whether the electric current is actually flowing through, and O, what is the outcome. So the first thing that I would say is that I would actually talk about how this paper is an insulator of electricity. So you have to say that the paper strip is an insulator of electricity. Hence, it causes the circuit to be incomplete and electric currents cannot flow through the circuit. The bulb, which prevents the from lighting up. Okay, so we need to take a look at this whole statement. Alright, so firstly I pointed out that it is an insulator of electricity. So because of that, it will cause your circuit to actually be incomplete. This is my C here. And then I went on to say that electric currents cannot flow through the circuit. This is my E here. Lastly, my O would be this prevents the bulb from lighting up. So it works like that, CEO. Alright? Okay, moving on. Now in the space below, draw a circuit diagram to represent the circuit and a torchlight without paper strip attached. Use symbols given below for your diagram. This question is actually very kind to you. They gave you the symbols. Now in exams, you could be asked to draw, alright, without giving any symbols help. So make sure you memorize it. Okay? So now, first things first, please use a pencil. Next thing, whenever drawing lines, please use a ruler. Now, in this case, we have to figure out, is it a parallel or is it a series? So what you do is, you always trace. That's what I like to do. So if you take a look at this, remember I told you this, we will always use from positive to negative. That's how your current starts. So from here, okay, it will go in, my bulb, out, okay, go down, go up, okay, and then after that, oh, my apologies, no, I just realized that the contact point is at the side here, so my apologies. Can we do that again? Let's do it one more time. Okay, so let's start off with this end now. It's a little bit clearer. So from positive, it goes on to your negative, goes up to your bulk, goes out, goes across your switch, assuming that the paper strip is out, right? The question said without. There you go. Okay, so we'll just ignore this, go in and connect it. So as you can see, what I'm seeing here is that this is actually a series circuit, not a parallel. There's only one bulb, right? And the batteries are actually one after another. Okay, so let's take a look. So from positive to negative, so this is one after another. Okay, very straightforward. So make sure whenever you are drawing something to represent the circuit, you want to be sure, if they say represent, the number of batteries, you need to take note. How many? Number of bulbs, how many? Is your switch open or closed? Okay? Now, so take a look at this. When you remove the strip out, the switch, from what I can see here, is once this is removed, your switch is actually closed. Right? So once you pull it off, this is actually closed based on the diagram here. So make sure you draw your switch. So we know that it's closed. We know that it is there's two batteries, and we know there's only one bulb. So with that, we can start drawing. So let's see. So I will actually draw my components in first. I know that I have a bulb, and I also know that I have two batteries, and I know I have a switch that comes between these two. And then I will connect using my wires. Now, very careful, your wires needs to be straight. And no gaps, absolutely no gaps at all. I cannot stress this anymore. If there is a gap, it'll be point deduction. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that all my gaps are filled and my switch is closed. So check. One bulb, checked. Two batteries, check. And batteries, make sure that it's negative, positive, negative, positive. Okay, that means the negative always follows a positive. Positive, positive cannot be the case. All right, no gaps, switch is closed. Okay, so these are some tips for drawing circuit diagrams. Moving on. Now, Jane's friends found the torchlight too dim. He wanted to modify the torchlight by adding more light bulb in series. Explain why additional light bulb may not result in a brighter torchlight. So from here, it really gives us a very big hint that, okay, it's in series. So if you recall, I told you before, if you add bulbs in parallel, every single bulb will be equivalent to the first bulb. So for example, if I have something that is like this, let me draw in the battery, and this is like worth 5 rays of brightness or units of brightness, the next one I add in will also be very good, 5. So it will drain my battery faster. But does it help? Yes, because then the total is 10 units of brightness, okay, or lux, which is a unit for measuring brightness. Now if it's in series, so for example, I have 1 and I'm going to add 1 more, it would not help, because with every single bulb that you add, you are actually sharing the amount of electricity between these two. Alright, and each bulb becomes dimmer with each additional bulb. So it really doesn't help with the amount of brightness. Okay? So together they will still be 5 units of brightness. So you can say that additional bulbs, okay, or rather the amount of electricity is shared between all the bulbs arranged in series. Okay, so because the electric current is shared, it wouldn't result in any, it wouldn't help with the level of brightness. Okay, moving on. Oh, this question, classic question, you have to know this. So remember in class I always tell you common application on electricity. They either the electrical appliance or the electrical component, working component could either be a bulb or an electromagnet. So this is a very classic example of that. Alright, so explain how the door unlocks when the switch is closed. So when the switch is closed, so I'm just going to trace. You will notice that this is an iron core, and iron is basically a magnetic material. So because it is a magnetic material, you actually would know that it will become an electromagnet when, okay, its electricity is running through a coil wire around this magnetic material. You have learned this in P3. Alright? So you know that this will become a magnet, and what happens is that it should attract your iron bulb in this direction. So when it attracts it in this direction, this part will move over here, unlocking your door, because now this part is no longer in existence. It will not obstruct obstruct you from opening your door. Alright, so I hope you get the rough idea. So once again, I would use the strategy of CEO. Okay, CEO stands for circuit. I'm just going to write it down. Is your circuit open or closed? E stands for can your electric currents flow through the circuit? And O stands for what is the outcome? Okay, so let's talk about it. So when the switch is closed, what happens? First thing, the circuit is complete, right? So when the switch is closed, the circuit, sorry, give me a second, is complete. You can use the word complete, or is closed, and electric currents can flow through the circuit. Alright, so we have done our circuit, we've done electric current. Let's talk about outcomes. As electricity flows through the iron core, the iron core becomes an electromagnet. Alright, that is the first outcome. This electromagnet, which would then attracts the iron bolt. Okay, so the whole outcome is over here. So when it attracts it, it unlocks the door. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight for you. So the first part being closed is this part. Electric currents can flow through over here, and the last part is actually your outcome, becoming an electromagnet and attracting the iron bulb. Alright, I hope I'm clear. Let's move on. Would the electric lock would the door lock work if the iron core is changed to a wooden core? Now this is a very very common misconception. A lot of you actually put no, but your reason is wrong. You tell me that wood is basically it's an insulator of electricity. But you see, over here, yes, while that is true, but the problem about it is that they're talking about the core here. Now, electric current is not running through your core, it is running through the wires. Okay, if you take you know what I mean. So if this is your core, the electric current is going through the wire that is going round the core of it. So it doesn't matter whether or not your core is an electrical conductor. What's more important is that this core is actually made up of a magnetic material. So be very careful and think about it. Does it need to be a magnetic material or does it need to be a conductor of electricity? So this is a point that you need to clearly understand. So your answer is no. This is because wood is a non-magnetic material and cannot be made or magnetized into an electromagnet. Okay? So it's also not enough to just say that, oh, it's non-magnetic and you full stop there, because you need to tell me, so what if it's non-magnetic? So in this case, because you need a magnet, electromagnet to work, you have to tell me that, because of that, there is no electromagnet. Alright, moving on. Okay, John was walking his dog in the park. It was dark except for light from the street that nearby. Describe how John was able to see his dog. So first things first, you have to understand that how light ray works, how we able to see things. So this is actually your light source. So light will come from your light source. It will hit an object that you can see, bounce off the object, and then reflects into the eyes. And that's how you're able to see the object. Okay? So let's translate it into words. So I would say the light from the lamp falls onto the dog and got reflected or is reflected into John's eyes. And that's how he was able to see his dog. Now explain how John's shadow was formed on the ground. So if you know, basically an opaque object blocks, the path of light which travels straight, forming a shadow. So that's something that is very fundamental. So you would say that John's body is opaque. Hence, it has blocked the path of light, causing a dark shadow to form. Okay, next. John saw the shadow on the ground changing in length and position when his dog walked past the street lamp. State the change in length and position. Now this question is actually akin to the question about the position of the sun. Alright, so in this case, what's changing is the position of the object, not the sun. Okay? So you can think about it over here is that when John walks from X to Y. So when he walks in this direction, okay, his shadow would be the shortest at Y because it's directly below the light source, and that is the same as the sun being overhead. Okay, so basically John's shadow should actually decrease. Okay, and position of shadow is actually behind John. Okay, now why is it behind John? Because as he walks from here, so if John is here, the shadow is casting is from this direction and his shadow will be here. So as he walks from this point to this point, it will get shorter because it's closer to Y. So Y will be the shortest. So it's longest over here, and then as he walks, it actually decreases in length. Alright, and it's cast behind him. From Y to Z, as he walks from this position, remember it's the shortest here. Alright, and this is actually, it becomes longer. Okay, it actually increases in length. Alright, position of shadow is actually behind. Sorry, in front. My apologies, because he's walking in this direction. So the light will shine this way, he will block the light and it will be formed in front of him. Okay, so this is the answer. Moving on, question number 39. Okay, looking at this, I see the word styrofoam, I see pocket of air spaces. This looks like a question that's got to do with materials, okay, and heat and temperature at the same time. Okay, so let's see. Samantha poured 300 ml of water at 100 degrees into two identical cups. The cup B was placed in a styrofoam box. Temperature of water in each cup was measured every 5 minutes. The table below shows the temperature of water in both cups over 5 minutes. So right off the top, even before I looked at the results, based on my prior knowledge, I should be able to very quickly at least guess how the trend should look like. Now, the one that is inside the styrofoam box, which is B, has got pocket of air spaces. I know many people go, oh, the styrofoam box is a poor conductor of heat. Yes, but do you know that the reason why is actually styrofoam has also got air spaces in it, and it is this air spaces that is a poor conductor of heat. So based on this, I already know that the heat loss will be slower. Now, whenever you talk about conductors of heat, good conductor, poor conductor, you always talk about the rate at which the heat travels from one region to another region. So, revision on the most basic thing, we know that heat always travels from a region of higher temperature to a region of lower temperature. Now, we know that the surrounding is maybe approximately 25 degrees Celsius, typically. But it is said that the water is at 100 degrees Celsius, right? So heat will definitely traveling from this point to this region. Same. Now, the only difference is that heat is lost from the cup at a much slower rate in B due to the air spaces, because air is a poor conductor of heat. Okay, take note, please do not use the word insulator of heat, use poor conductor of heat. So what happens is that the rate of the heat traveling across from this region to this region here is going to slow down, and this will slow down heat loss and causes the temperature of cup B, or the water in cup B, to maintain at a higher temperature for a much longer time as compared to A. So this is actually my hypothesis even before looking at the results. So looking at it, is my prediction correct based on my explanation? Absolutely. So with every 5 minutes, you realize that cup B is always the higher one as compared to cup A. Alright? As you can see, I'm going down and I'm showing you that. Okay? Based on your observation of the diagram above, explain why the temperature in cup B decreased lower than that of A. In fact, they even tell you that it's decreased. So whenever they tell you that it's decreased, there's no point in actually giving, when you say the word decrease there, it doesn't give you any marks at all. So what we need to first explain is that the air spaces in the styrofoam sorry, just give me a minute. Is a poor conductor of heat. Half mark for telling me that. Therefore, heat would be lost at a slower rate from the cup B to the surrounding. Another half mark for telling me where is heat lost, from where to where. Okay, I cannot stress this anymore. Whenever you talk about heat gain, heat loss, you must always tell me from where to where. If it's a heat gain, where did I gain my heat from? For example, from the sun to the water. If it's a heat loss, where is it lost from? Oh, from the water from cup B, the heat is lost to the surrounding. B. After some time, water droplets were observed on the inner surface lid of X of styrofoam. Okay? Explain why this happens. So I'm just going to erase all this so that I can better explain this. Now, so obviously, you know that your X is here. Now, X is quite far away from the hot water over here. So we can assume that the temperature that is over here at the top of it is actually cooler. Okay, has a lower temperature as compared to over here. So very simply put, what actually happened is that the hot water vapor would have risen, and when it touched the cooler surface of X, it actually condensed into water droplets. Alright, so now to put that into writing, there's a few things we must always talk about. So we said that the warm water vapor from cup would rise and touch the cooler surface of X. The water vapor would lose heat to the lid or X and condense to form water droplets. I know you may think, oh, it's only a 1 mark. Why do you write so much, right? But this is the standard answer when it comes to condensation. So I really need you to memorize this and remember, we always talk about a few things. What are the few things? We always talk about touching a cooler surface, very important, because without this cooler surface, there is no temperature difference. And then I need you to talk about losing the heat to where? Remember? So to the lid. And then I need you to tell me condense to form water droplets. So these are the few points that you have to include in whenever you are talking about condensation. Moving on. Samantha took a piece of frozen meat from the freezer to defrost it by putting it on a tray. Which type of tray? Glass, metal, or wooden tray should she choose to put the frozen meat on so that she can defrost the frozen meat in the shortest time? So once again, with heat question, I will always determine which region is of a higher temperature. So in this case, alright, this is about 25 degrees Celsius surrounding, or if it's outdoor, it's 30 degrees. But I know that my meat is frozen, so that's 0 degrees, right? So based on it, I know that, okay, the heat from the surrounding would have to be lost to my meat. And while it's going into my meat, it has to go through this tray here, which I'm going to color in blue so that you can see, okay, before it's being lost to my meat. In other words, my meat is actually, it needs to gain heat in order to defrost. Now, there are quite a lot of you who told me that it needs to lose coldness. That is absolutely wrong. You cannot lose coldness. Coldness is not a type of energy. You can't do that. So the only way you can actually become less cold is to actually gain heat. Alright? So in this case, you would want a material to be a good conductor of heat. Why? Then the heat can actually pass from your surrounding and into your meat at a very fast rate, so that your meat can defrost very quickly. Okay? So the answer, let's pen all those things that we have discussed it. So metal. Why? Because metal is a better, or is the best conductor of heat as compared to the rest of the materials. Now in this case, you have to use the correct comparative word. Is it best, better, or best or better? Now, why do I use best? Because there is more than 2 items. If there's only 2 items, I will use better. Now, you need to be very careful. Why is it that I choose, I cannot put good conductor? Glass is actually a good conductor of heat, in case you didn't know. Okay, but in this case, metal is better. So if you say good, it's wrong, because your glass is also a good conductor of heat. Both are good. So it's really about comparing. You have to use the right comparative words. Okay? So it's the best conductor of heat as compared to the rest of the materials. Hence, remember I told you, whenever you talk about conductors of heat, you have to talk about speed, or the rate at which heat is being gained or lost. And whenever you talk about gain or loss, it's always from where to where. Hence, heat can be gained by the frozen meat from the surrounding at a faster rate. Now, note how I'm using words like faster, because it's already happening. It's just that I want it to be faster, so I use the word faster. Okay? Alright, moving on. Next question. Hazel helped her mother wash a few plates after lunch. She distributed the wet plates evenly into 2 stacks A and B. She placed stacks A and B on 2 tables at different locations. Alright, which stacks of plate A on B would dry faster? Explain your answer. So one has a fan, right? Okay. So for this question is talking about factors affecting rate of evaporation. Now I've said many times, the factors will include wind speed, temperature, as well as exposed surface area. So of these 3 that I've talked about, when they increase, so does rate of evaporation. A lot of you didn't talk about rate of evaporation for some strange reason. You left that out totally. You have to put it into your answer. Alright, and the last factor being humidity. When it increases, rate of evaporation actually decreases. So in this case, there's a fan. So obviously we'll talk about wind speed. Now, this worth 1 mark. So you have to first tell me that the answer would be B. This is because the presence of a fan increases wind speed, half a mark for time back, which speeds up or increases the rate of evaporation, and that's where your other half mark comes from, okay, which many of you left it out. Moving on, okay, question B and C. Now, a drying dish rack is shown below. Dishes are placed vertically instead of horizontally. Vertically means this way instead of horizontally. Suggest two advantages of placing the dishes vertically for drying. So the first advantage is that it increases exposed surface area. Okay, why? Because when you do this and you stack a next plate on top of it and the next plate, the only parts that get exposed is the sides, right? If you take a look at it, it's only the sides that are exposed for drying. But when you put it this way, with gaps in between, all right, this whole part actually gets exposed for drying. All right, so the first thing is that, okay, it increases exposed surface area of the plates, which increases rate of evaporation. Now, it is just not good enough to tell me that, oh, increases surface area, but why? Why do you want to increase the exposed surface area? Because it increases rate of evaporation, which many of you didn't put the second part again. Now, the second advantage is that when it's placed this way, your water droplets will actually start to drip downwards. So when it drips downward, you're actually removing water, right? In that case, it helps with the drying process. So you can say that water droplets on the plates would drip downwards. Alright. Now the last part. Okay. The diagram below shows an electric dryer which is sold in countries with very cold weather. It works by enclosing dishes in a warm air for a fixed period of time. Explain how the warm air in the electrical dish dryer helps to dry the dishes. So a lot of you talk about, the dishes will gain heat. Now be very careful, it is not the dishes that will gain heat that matters, but the water droplets on the dishes that gain heat that matters, because you want your water droplets to evaporate. Okay, and the next thing is, a lot of you did tell me that due to the warm air, it actually increases the temperature of the surrounding. Okay, so you can say that the warm air has a higher temperature. That's important. Remember, I told you higher temperature results in faster rate of evaporation. This increases the rate of evaporation of water droplets on the plate. So because it increases rate of evaporation of the water droplets, your plates will get dry faster, right? Alright, so we've come to the end of this paper. If you've got anything that you're not sure of, please make sure to go back and slowly play back the video. Alright,